the next topic I'd like to chat a little bit about is around the pricing models for the channel. So Nehul and John, I'll kind of break this into two sections. Let's chat about new business first, and then we'll come to renewals or retention, which is probably more important than ever in the world of SaaS, and how people go about that. So Nehul, if I can, I'll start with yourself, and maybe just if you wouldn't mind, just share your thoughts, your experience around what are the types of pricing models that we see now most commonly used by vendors out there in the channel. Is it transaction based? Is it tiered? Is it licensed? What is it? So yeah, just be interested in your what you're seeing, please.
Well, again, Kenneth, I'll go from the perspective of dependent on the type of solution we are in, right? Are we a fast-moving, consumerized, volume-driven solution, right? Could be a CRM, could be an HRMS solution, could be email collaboration tools and stuff like that. Each one of these would be priced differently, right? So you could go anywhere from transaction fee-based, user-based, user slab-based, module-driven, annual, and then of course the billing mechanisms that come into play, whether you're doing a quarterly, monthly, or annualized billing perspective. I think one of the key factors that I would though talk about a little before we talk from that pricing standpoint is a lot of the on-prem solution providers who are now trying to get into the SaaS perspective, they need to differentiate between what is pure SaaS to what is hosted offering, because it impacts the pricing big time, right? Because when we look at a true SaaS, the architecture of SaaS, right, whether it's multi-tenant, multi-entity, self-provisioning, billing-driven, right, where we're looking at volume, right? We're not looking at 10, 20, 30 customers being onboarded in the year. We're looking at hundreds and thousands of customers being onboarded on the year, right? And there are tons of players globally who fall in that space, compared to those who would go and do a single instance hosted offering and then calling it SaaS, because both ways, and then provide annual licensing or a subscription driven modeling. There is a big gap between the two, and it impacts the pricing mechanism when we really go and look at it. But from a pure SaaS solution, the ability for the customer to consume will define the pricing model based on the type of if you're a collaboration tool providing video conferencing, the same way as we're using GoToWebinar or GoToMeeting today, it could even go down to transaction, or it could go down to consumption based. How many minutes are you using in a month, or how many minutes are you going to use in a quarter? And accordingly, they move away from the whole U-based pricing or module-based pricing. But we look at players like you. I mean, you're one of the best examples to have on this session, right? Very focused, very domain specific SaaS offering. It could be multiple, right? Module driven, user driven, or a combination of both, or a combination of multiple. So the pricing models would change based on what the offering is. We cannot take a cookie cutter approach that SaaS means we'll do a per month billing, per user billing, and apply it to all kinds of solutions, because it may not work, or because for some of the larger solutions, you may have a lot of users who are actually not there to use the system, but maybe just from an approval standpoint, or they're light users, right? They don't need the whole thing, or self-service driven scenarios, whereas the rest of the solution really needs a proper user driven engagement. So pricing model could be multiple, module, user, setup, transaction fee based, right? So some of them could be based on transactions, especially fintech is using transaction fee based pricing model a lot these days, where based on the transactions they charge you, and it's recurring in nature. And of course, setup fees, whether you charge it, you incorporate it within the pricing itself, there's no setup fee created. All of this goes into to different pricing scenarios.
Okay, no, that thank you, Nehul. And John, anything you wanted to comment on that, please?
I think that was a tremendous comprehensive answer, Nehul. So just a couple of additional comments. This is the most popular question I think anybody working in the SaaS world gets asked. It exercises the product management teams, the revenue teams, the finance teams, the CXOs, and definitely triggered a lot of questions into our feeds before the webinar. I want to give a perspective from the customer. Like, ultimately, let's think about our customers, what they want. And regardless of whether it's been on-prem or SaaS, our customers are looking for the following things. So price transparency, visibility of what the pricing model is going to be, just not today, but in the future, predictability of their future fees and costs over the next 1, 2, 3 years, flexibility. So 2020 was the year that taught us a lot about flexibility. If my business circumstances change, is your pricing flexible, that you're not going to impose constraints on me and I can maybe tie back some of my pricing and reduce my billing? And then more importantly, with the world of SaaS, and particularly as Nehul has said, if you've truly architected your platform as a SaaS offering, customers expect that that platform is a pay-as-we-grow model. They want to invest with you. They want partnerships where, please don't give me your premium price plan today, but allow me to scale as you scale. So more and more cloud platforms are putting out this 3-tier pricing model, starter pack, maybe a medium pack, and then a premium pack. So think about giving bundles, and that's very important for the point that Nehul made. If you're a domain specialist, your partners, your customers effectively expect you to know their domain. So you should be able to price accordingly into the sort of business that they're operating in. Good example is fintech. If you're servicing the credit union sector, by default, you should know that that's typically a not-for-profit sector or very low margin. You should not be charging the same platform rates as you're charging to a tier 1 commercial bank. So that's the type of pricing partnership that customers are now looking from pure SaaS vendors.
Okay, no, that's super. And kind of moving back to the channel partner aspect of it, then maybe Nehul, again, if you wouldn't mind, just, because it's very different, and I see this firsthand myself, again, margins are very different than in the traditional product world. So, and I'm sure people are very interested in this. What, maybe share a little bit about margins. How do vendors decide what margins they give up to partners? Is it by tier? Is it by the SaaS offer itself, and so on? So yeah, just to dig into that for a few minutes, please.
So there is there's an overall general perception, right, amongst the channel, especially a lot of those that I've spoken to. And in fact, I was with a SaaS vendor a few weeks ago talking around the same thing. Most channel partners believe that SaaS vendors do not give margins on license subscriptions, right? They believe that the SaaS vendor, especially if they are able to get subscriptions online directly, do not really bother about how much, they're not really keen to shell out a bigger chunk of margins to partners. Now, that may be true for certain players, again, if it's a commoditized offering, right? But it's definitely not true when we get into very domain specific, high enterprise based offerings where the partner plays a significant role even for that SaaS solution to be sold, right? And when we look at that, the margins could vary from 5 points to 30 points, right? I mean, dependent on the product being sold and the commodity, how commoditized is that offering? How crowded is the marketplace with the different SaaS providers in that space? But the overall expectation today that we've seen from a lot of SaaS vendors that we've spoken to is that they expect the partner to make money on services, right? They expect the partner to provide not just consulting or deploy or configuration services, but even managed services around this, build a practice around that offering, right? And that's where the partner, and which is true even if you were an on-prem provider, right? I mean, on-prem also, beyond the point, the partner makes better margins, right, when they're doing services. Product resell by default does not give you, brilliant margins at any given point in time. The expectation on the other side, when people are moving from on-prem to SaaS, the margins that need to be shelled out is that they look at some of the largest SaaS vendors globally, and then that becomes their benchmark for margins, that or discount structures or slabs or tier-driven, right? ARR-driven, MRR, how much ARR you'll do, accordingly your slabs will change, and you'll get the annual recurring revenue or a monthly recurring revenue driven kind of margins to the partner. But it cannot be a cookie approach that if some of the biggest players are doing it this way, that's how we should also do it. Look at the solution, look at the domain you're trying to sell, and look at what the partner contributes to that MRR or ARR to happen, right? Look at customer acquisition matrix, right? Look at so many different parameters before you decide what is the discount and margins that you would provide to the partner, right? It cannot just be a standardized structure and say that it's not been very successful. Partners are not very happy with those kind of models.
Okay, thanks, Nehul. And John, just in terms of the models you see around the sales periods for SaaS, is it as simple as typically the consumer SaaS is just monthly? What do you see in the world of the channel in terms of how long those typical SaaS contracts run for?
Yeah, I think it's a mix, and some of it is driven by partner type as well, Kenneth. So if we look at the mix, and let's look at the SMB or the small medium business sector, they are very attracted to a pure SaaS model where they can maybe pay monthly by credit card or quarterly flexibility or annually, as a worst case. But we typically see for that SMB sector, they love the flexibility of truly being able to pay monthly or pay as you go as well as pay as you grow that we talked about. When you get to the enterprise level, and there's some very interesting dynamics happening in the market right now that I'll share on this. But take the enterprise. Typically, a lot of large enterprise corporations try to buy for 1 year. So you've got that mix where that's just their standard model, where they want to forward buy, put it to bed, buy the contract up front, and that's just to stop having all this sort of back office noise in their operations finance team, invoicing, processing that. So that they've got the capacity financially and the engine just to take an annual payment. If your partner type is the global system integrators, this is where you can really hit pay dirt, because these companies are looking to sign 3, 5, 7, 10-year frame agreements, and they will quite often also take your term up to that length of time as well. So it's a tremendous model. Now, you do bear a little bit of risk if you sign up to a 5-year or 10-year agreement. You have to think about forward pricing. Don't lock yourself into your 2020 price for the next 10 years. You have to be clever and make sure that you forward price into that overall agreement. And a true partnership would be reflected in that the global system integrator or your big partner would actually help you on that path as well. The dynamic that I'm seeing, which is very interesting at the minute, is particularly here in Europe, where we've just gone through Brexit with the sort of pandemic turmoil. The exchange rates and the currency transaction and deviation in rates between different countries around the world has really created a dynamic now where people are looking to actually buy for 1, 2, and 3 years and pay up front. Now, even though they have the flexibility to pay monthly or quarterly, they're buying what I call in the old style now to protect themselves from currency deviations. So nothing to do with the flexibility of SaaS. It's just the economic conditions. And I said earlier, people want visibility and predictability of their costs. Currency still has a big impact on the buying model.
And if I may add here, we're seeing exactly the same thing here. And this is especially true when we look at enterprise solutions, because that's where the organization has a good investment, whether it's from SaaS or on-prem perspective, either which ways. The total cost of ownership is what they're trying to drive down in that scenario. And that's where they come in with a 3-year contract, 5-year contract, lock you in on price, lock you in on everything. Some of them are willing to pay you upfront annually. Some of them are even saying, you get me extra discount structures. We'll even pay you for 3-year pricing upfront. The whole pricing model, but needs to have that flexibility, as John very rightly said, from an SMB to the enterprise perspective of what can or cannot be done, and scalability, right? Whether you scale up or scale down based on your need, based on your situation, based on your business. Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, so I'll move on a little bit. Just fairly briefly, what are the challenges you guys see or hear from the channel regarding SaaS pricing, and yeah, keep this one fairly brief, please.
Sure. So, sorry, John, you want to take that first, or should I?
No, I would say take that, Nehul, and we'll move on to the polls. Yeah.
Sure. So, so when we look at challenges that the channel partners are seeing from SaaS pricing, it's the complexity, right? On a prima facie, it makes it very simple. A lot of vendors have done it, simple 3-tiered pricing based on and calling it editions, right? As they say, starter edition, standard edition, professional, enterprise, whichever way they call these editions. They've tried to keep it. But the moment partners are getting involved, moment the customer's needs and requirements are being scoped and everything, and especially for our enterprise solutions, pricing models are becoming very, very complicated.
Okay.
Same deal could have a mix of user, module, and transactional fee-based pricing coming into play. So it's actually becoming, partners are not liking the complexity a lot of vendors are bringing to the table at times. They prefer the simplicity as much as possible. The expectation or perception of SaaS is simplify things, right? Not complicate things.
Yeah, no, that's great, Nehul. And I suppose I know we're getting tight on time, so we'll keep moving. But some of the challenges I hear every day, partners will say that we need support in that transition from traditional to SaaS because the not so much the margins are definitely better, but the actual core value of the deal is much lower than 100,000 now could be 30,000. So that's where they made their money, and that's difficult for some partners, which in turn has driven the new ecosystem of partners.